Welcome back to Writing Done Right. Well, today I just want to talk a little bit about my story, how I got into writing, and why I started Writing Done Right. So grab yourself a cup of something to drink and follow along. Alright, so in the writing world, we oftentimes get asked, why do you write? What got you started in writing? And so I just want to talk a little bit about that. It's kind of a brief background, a brief story as to how I got started in writing. And, we didn't really come from a home that had a lot of books in it. Of course, as kids, we did have the classics like scary stories to tell in the dark. And we loved reading these. Friends would stay over and we'd read them under throw some blankets or sheets in there and read them to the flashlights. And then, somebody, of course, would sneak out and that was the type of stuff. But really, I think the only real book we had in the house at that point in time was actually Stephen King, Misery. And just out of 6th grade, myself and my brother did something really stupid and got ourselves grounded. And so we were kids that really enjoyed media and video games and music and stuff like that. And so, of course, we got grounded from that stuff, too. And so my mother took all that stuff away, except I did sneak aside poison tape. We got you, Mom. We got you. We got you. But that being said, what else could I do? Well, I was allowed to read a book. We had one in the house. Misery. Stephen King. Misery seemed fitting for a 6th grader grounded, right? So I read Misery and I get to the end and I really enjoyed the concept of reading a book. And I think it was probably that circumstance that led me into wanting to be an author. And so if you'd ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Author. That sounds awesome. Your name on a book, and things like that. And I thought it was just kind of a neat thing. And so I wanted to experiment with that kind of stuff, and I wrote probably my first ever book at that point in time. Yeah, baby. Yeah. This is an embarrassment, by the way. I mean, don't tell anybody, because... So anyway, of course, I did this. Very good craftsmanship for the age that I was. I even opened it up, and I had a title page. It's all cardboard. It's falling apart. Of course, here's a table of contents. And it's bad. I mean, this is bad. All handwritten. But this was officially my first book. But my mom was always supportive on hobbies and interests and things. And so she got me a typewriter. And I forget what brand it was that did those typewriters. But it was one of the first electric typewriters where you could type in. It could actually do spell check. You have this little screen that you could read like 2 or 3 words at a time across it. So you could write your whole thing and push a button and it'd print the whole thing out. And I wrote a lot of little stories, so I don't think any of those actually survived. What did survive is when I moved from middle school into high school is I started writing a lot of poetry. And I do have nearly all of that. I think I only know of 1 or 2 poems that were actually lost eventually. But I kept all this poetry, which eventually I will release a poetry anthology book. But then I kind of took a break from writing as I was looking at what did I want to do with my life. And I went into the sciences, and I did keep writing poetry during that time. But it wasn't until I finished grad school and I'm out teaching at a college university. And I was like, well, I got to find something else to do because I feel like I'm a guy that always has to be doing something. And so I got to this point where my doctor's done. I'm teaching. Now I'm kind of settling into a regular schedule. So what do you do? It's like, you know what? I want to go back and pursue that dream of writing again. And so I started working on a few books, and I had a few false starts. Now, understand this. While Misery was that first book that I read, I have read probably only a handful of fictional things. I read mostly nonfiction. Like this whole bookshelf here, I have read everything on this bookshelf, I believe. And this is just a fraction of the things that I've read. And it's business, it's nonfiction, it's faith-based, it's just things like that. So I tend to gravitate toward that genre. So the books I've actually released, and I've published 5 books at this point in time. And those books generally tend to gear towards the nonfiction, the truth-based, which is actually a good genre because I've never seen anybody talk about how to write that type of book either. So we are going to do some of that on this channel. But all that being said, what I think is kind of an interesting approach is that I started getting into writing the Christian stuff because I'm a Christian, but I published all that, and really where this channel came from is while I was doing my writing and my publishing, I didn't know a lot. And I even felt like I was doing a lot of research, yet I still fell into vanity presses, which you don't want to do. I still fell into not really understanding where I'm getting into. And I also ran into issues of almost all of the writing channels will talk about you get your manuscript done, we got the marketing, we get all these things. But every bit of it's just like, hey, we're not going to focus on teaching you how to do a cover, just go hire somebody for it. Well, what if you actually want to do that yourself? And so I took the time to teach myself what is it that makes a good book cover. And the book covers that I've come up with over the years were actually kind of interesting. Now, some of them, of course, I have a parody book here, so that was easy. It was just a slight creative tint on the original book. So that was the same. But everything else was, I just kind of had to come up with my own approaches. So I did everything from taking a photograph and turning it into a hand drawing to full-fledged 3D animation studios to do a complete digital scene, and then a variety of little things in between. So I learned how to do the book covers. And then, of course, you had to learn how to do the interior designs. And I never really cared for the quality that I got back on some of the vanity press. You know, it's like you get the book out and you're all excited about it. But when you start comparing it to some other books out there, you lose out on the fact that there's millions of fonts you can use. You miss out on using different fonts for different things. Of course, since I write Christian, I use a different font for my Bible verses, for example. I use nice drop-down caps. There's just a lot of things that you just didn't get if you're allowing a system to build your book, or if you're just using the cheapest method you can of converting your manuscript into a book form. So what I wanted to do is teach myself all of the ins and outs of doing that kind of stuff. But the extra caveat is I am into free and open source software. In fact, I have another channel that I teach that almost entirely on a variety of different topics and pieces of software. So how could I do all of my book production just with free software? And that's what I figured out how to do. And so now we've gotten to this point in my story. What's left? Well, what's left now is to take all of this knowledge that I have and pass it off to you guys. So you want to know from, I want to get a book written, to how to get the manuscript done. You want to say, how do I take this completed manuscript that we got it edited, now I need to convert this into the format to be sent, and I want to learn how to make it professional. What about, are you producing ebooks and audiobooks? Hint, you want to be in those sectors. Ebooks are going to be your number one sellers. Audiobooks are one of the fastest growing means of consuming your books. And so these are all areas that you want to get into. And learning how to do this will save you a lot of money down the road if that's something that you'd like to do. So what I did is I decided that this channel was a place where we are going to pass on all of this knowledge. We want to pass on the ability to start with your concept, right all the way up to it, get the book published, get it out to the distributors, and then maybe we'll talk about marketing. Maybe I'll refer you to one of the other channels. Marketing is not a strong suit of mine. Just in full acknowledgement, full disclosure. Marketing is not a strong suit of mine at the time I'm recording this video. That may change. I may become a marketing guru in the next year. I don't know. We'll just have to keep following along with the channel. So thanks for coming along on this journey of mine. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Turn on those notifications. Give this thing a like and let me know in the comments down below. Are you working on your first book? Do you have questions? Do you need help formatting it? All these types of questions, we are interested in helping you with finding those answers. So thanks for coming along on this journey, and don't forget, we will teach you how to get your writing done right.